Today, I'm taking you back to the frugal kitchens of the 1960s, where housewives turned humble ingredients into meals that still spark nostalgia decades later. Did you know the average family in 1960 spent about 17% of their income on food? That's nearly double what we spend today, yet they managed to feed bigger families on less. How did they pull off this minor miracle? It wasn't just luck. It was strategic planning that would put many of today's meal preppers to shame. Step into a 1960s kitchen and you'd find yourself in a different economic universe. While today we might dash to the store for a forgotten ingredient or order takeout when we're too tired to cook, families back then simply couldn't afford such luxuries. With a gallon of milk costing around 95 cents, bread at about 20 cents a loaf, and ground beef at approximately 60 cents per pound, these prices might seem incredibly cheap. But when adjusted to the family budgets of the time, every penny needed careful consideration. The weekly grocery trip wasn't a casual errand. It was practically a military operation. Mom would spread the newspaper across the kitchen table, scissors in hand, meticulously clipping coupons and circling sale items. She'd create detailed shopping lists organized by store layout, planning meals around what was on special that week. This wasn't just being thrifty. It was financial management at its most practical. In these kitchens, staple ingredients weren't just food items. They were the building blocks of family economics. Potatoes, dried beans, ground beef, and seasonal vegetables purchased in bulk formed the foundation of countless meals. The freezer wasn't just an appliance, it was a strategic tool that allowed families to stock up when prices dropped, preserving seasonal produce for months when those same items would cost 3 times as much. When money was tight, you didn't turn your nose up at what was put on the table, shared one homemaker from that era, highlighting the pragmatic approach to mealtime. Nothing, and I mean nothing, went to waste. Those bread ends? They became croutons or breadcrumbs for stretching ground meat. Chicken bones simmered into stock. Even vegetable peels had purpose, finding their way into soups or compost for the garden that would produce next summer's free vegetables. Dining out was a genuine special occasion, perhaps a birthday dinner or anniversary celebration, not the several times weekly convenience it has become for many modern families. Home cooking wasn't a trendy hobby. It was an economic necessity that kept families fed and budgets balanced. Those scratch cooking skills were put to their toughest test when it came to protein. Ever wonder why your grandmother's meatloaf tasted different from anything you can make today? The secret wasn't just in her seasoning. It was in how she stretched that precious pound of ground beef to feed an entire family when meat consumed the biggest chunk of her food budget. With protein being the most expensive part of the 1960s grocery list, housewives became masters of meat-stretching techniques that would impress even today's top chefs. That single pound of ground beef? It had to feed 6 hungry mouths, not the 2 or 3 we might expect today. The solution wasn't to serve less. It was to add more of everything else. Breadcrumbs, oatmeal, and grated vegetables became essential mix-ins that doubled the volume while adding flavor and nutrition. Your grandmother wasn't being cheap. She was being brilliant. Those tough, inexpensive cuts that many shoppers pass by today were the backbone of 1960s dinner tables. Chuck roast and flank steak might have been challenging to work with, but slow cooking transformed these budget cuts into fork-tender family favorites. That Sunday pot roast wasn't just a delicious tradition. It was a strategic cooking method that made affordable meat irresistible. And let's talk about organ meats, something many of us wrinkle our noses at today. Liver and kidneys appeared regularly on dinner tables across America, not because everyone loved them, but because they cost pennies compared to premium cuts. Clever homemakers developed techniques to make these affordable proteins more palatable, like soaking liver in milk to reduce its strong flavor before cooking. When money was tight, families adapted their tastes rather than their expectations for a hearty meal. The humble casserole deserves special recognition as the champion of protein stretching. A small amount of tuna, chicken, or ground beef mixed with pasta, rice, or potatoes could miraculously feed an entire family. Goulash became a staple in many households, using minimal ground beef with pantry ingredients to create a satisfying meal that stuck to your ribs. Beans emerged as the secret weapon in the frugal cook's arsenal. They provided protein and fiber at a fraction of meat's cost, often complementing or sometimes replacing meat entirely. Ham and beans became a beloved meal in many households, using inexpensive dried beans and leftover ham to create something truly satisfying. Perhaps most striking to modern eyes would be the portion sizes. While today's restaurant might serve an 8-ounce steak per person, the 1960s family divided similar amounts among multiple plates, relying on sides and creative preparation to make the meal feel complete. Nothing went to waste either. Bones became broth, scraps became soup, and leftovers transformed into entirely new meals. Potatoes were the crown jewel of the budget-conscious kitchen. Far from the monotonous side dish we might imagine, these starchy wonders shape-shifted throughout the week. Monday might feature crispy potato pancakes, their edges golden and crackling from being fried in saved bacon grease. By Wednesday, those same potatoes might appear as creamy scalloped potatoes, layered with a simple white sauce and baked until bubbling. The weekend could bring mashed potatoes whipped to perfection, creating the perfect vehicle for stretching a modest amount of gravy across multiple plates. One humble vegetable, countless variations, each feeling like an entirely different meal. The rice and pasta shelf worked similar everyday miracles. These blank canvas ingredients formed the foundation for an incredible variety of meals. A simple pot of boiled pasta could become anything from basic buttered noodles on payday eve to an elaborate casserole incorporating whatever vegetables were looking past their prime in the crisper drawer. Rice transformed from a simple side dish to the star of the show when mixed with a small amount of leftover meat and whatever seasonings could transport the family's taste buds to distant lands they might never actually visit. Eggs weren't relegated to the breakfast table either. These protein powerhouses moonlighted as dinner centerpieces, showing up in fluffy frittatas studded with bits of leftover ham, cheese-topped quiches filled with whatever vegetables were on hand, or starring in those special breakfast for dinner nights that children particularly cherished. A dozen eggs could carry a family through lean times with surprising variety. Perhaps most impressively, clever seasoning turned repetition into variety. The same base ingredients could journey around the world through the strategic use of herbs and spices. Tonight's chicken might feature oregano and tomatoes for an Italian flair, while tomorrow the very same bird could appear with chili powder for a south-of-the-border transformation. This culinary sleight of hand meant families could eat diverse meals despite using the same core ingredients repeatedly. The aroma of homemade bread deserves special mention among these budget-stretching techniques. Beyond being more economical than store-bought varieties, bread baking filled the home with a scent so intoxicating it could make even the simplest meal feel like a special occasion. A bowl of basic vegetable soup became a feast when accompanied by a warm slice of fresh-baked bread, proving that satisfaction came not just from fullness, but from engaging all the senses. That warm bread wasn't just served anywhere. It was placed at the center of what might be the most powerful force in American home life, the family dinner table. Did you know that in the 1960s, nearly 3/4 of families reported eating dinner together every single night? These weren't casual gatherings around the TV or grabbing plates to eat in separate rooms. They were proper sit-down affairs where everyone, from dad after work to the youngest child, gathered around the same table at the same time. The dinner table in a 1960s home wasn't just a piece of furniture, it was the family's communication headquarters. Without smartphones, tablets, or even a TV in the dining area, conversation flowed naturally. Parents asked about school days, siblings squabbled and made up, and important family news was shared over steaming plates of budget-friendly meals. These daily gatherings created a rhythm to family life that many people still remember with powerful nostalgia decades later. Sunday dinners took on special significance in this era. The familiar aroma of a chicken frying in the kitchen or a pot roast slow cooking in the oven signaled the week's most anticipated family gathering. These weren't expensive meals, but they were prepared with extra care and served with a sense of occasion that transformed ordinary food into cherished weekly traditions. Something magical happened when families sat down to these special meals. Connections strengthened over dishes that cost pennies but somehow felt like luxury. Around these tables, children absorbed far more than just proper fork placement. They witnessed firsthand how creativity and resourcefulness could transform humble ingredients into something wonderful. When Mom turned yesterday's roast chicken into today's chicken and noodle casserole, kids learned valuable lessons about making the most of what you have. Lessons that would serve them throughout their lives. The dinner table became life's classroom, where values were passed down alongside the mashed potatoes. Holiday meals showcased perhaps the most impressive budget stretching of all. Those magnificent Thanksgiving turkeys and Christmas hams didn't materialize from unlimited funds. They were the result of careful planning, saving, and ingenious kitchen management. Many homemakers would set aside small amounts from their grocery budgets for weeks or months, ensuring they could create festive feasts without straining the family finances. The satisfaction of presenting an abundant holiday table on a limited budget was a special point of pride.